Hello and welcome. In today's tutorial, we're going to be learning about networking exploits. We're going to learn how to abuse networking and how to patch networking exploits. In this tutorial, we're going to be using code from part 17 and part 18 of my Garry's Mod Lua tutorial series. So if you have not watched those videos yet, I recommend that you go do so now and then come back. So let's get into it. Okay, so in today's tutorial, I'm basically just using the same code from the previous tutorials. The only thing that I'm going to be changing here is I'm only going to be working with weapons. We did cover entities. However, in this case, I just want to show bad practice for whenever you have, for example, a weapon shop. So I'm going to remove the entities here. So we just have the weapons. And then in our server side here, this is our normal net.receive. I believe this is a really good example of networking and how to avoid exploits. And we're going to just have this in the background so we can reference it later, but we actually are going to be rewriting a bad example of networking so we can learn from it and abuse it. In our client-side code here, we have our tutorial shop. And basically what's happening here in our list here, whenever we go to purchase something, we are sending an ID, which is associated with an item. And if we send, for example, 1, we know that this is the SKS. If we send 2, then this is the M24. And if we send 3, that's the Glock. And you can see that we're getting all the item data here by indexing the ID. And I did go into further depth in this on the tutorial, so I recommend watching that if you have not already. And one more thing, inside my Garry's Mod directory here, inside our actual Lua folder where my Garry's Mod client is running, I have a file here called awesomecheat.lua. And so this is what I'm going to be using to exploit the net messages. And in this tutorial, I do have SV allow CS Lua 1 enabled. Typically, if you have this, you want this disabled. However, people can bypass this in multiple ways. But just for this tutorial, we are going to have it enabled. Make sure whenever you are running a server to have this disabled so no one can run client-side Lua. But now that we have that enabled, we are good to go to run our own client-side Lua, and then we should be good to go. So the first thing I want to do is talk about some bad things that I see when people are networking. So we're going to go ahead and redo this here. So if you see here, we have this item data. We have the name, the description, the price, and we have actually a bunch of more information such as the class name and the item type. What I'm going to want to do here is actually send the class name of the item that they're trying to buy, because that makes sense. So I'm going to do net.writeString, and then I'm going to do item data.className. Then we want to send the price of what they're trying to buy, because that makes sense, right? We want to charge them appropriate amount. So we're going to do item data.price, set aside 32 bits here. And then additionally, we want to send the player that is trying to buy something. So I'm going to do net.writeEntity. And it's the local player who's attempting to purchase something, which makes sense. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then on the server side here, whenever we receive this net message, what we want to do is obviously charge the player the appropriate amount, make sure we give the item to the correct player, and give them the right item. So the first thing that we sent was the class name. So I'm going to do local class name equals net.readString. Then we sent the price, which we sent 32 bits. So we're going to read 32. And then the player we sent as well. So we're going to read that entity that they sent. Let me just make sure that we are good here. Yep, net.writeEntity. That is the same setup here. So what we want to do, obviously, is check to see if they can afford this price, because we don't want to just give them a free item. So we're going to do if POI can afford price, then we're going to take the price or take that money. So we're going to do add money, and we're going to add the negative of the price. So we're basically subtracting here. And then we're going to do POI give, and we're going to give that class name. So now if I hop in game now, and let me reopen this menu here, I'm going to go ahead and purchase the SKS. You can see everything works as expected. And that is good here. Also, I forgot to save this. So we do have the previous items there. But yeah, everything is working good. I have the Glock, I got the SKS, my money is going down, I believe. Yes, it is. Also, I was able to buy this again because we didn't check to see if the player already has the weapon, so that's something we're going to want to add in as well. But the main focus here is this M24. It's $20,000. I don't want to spend $20,000, so what I'm going to do now is take a look at the server's code that I'm on, because there are file stealers, so that's something to keep in mind. And people can easily get a hold of any client-side files that you have, and so they can see your net messages, how they're structured, and what data is being sent to the server. So if I was to look at this code here that we just wrote, which is a really, really bad thing to do, this is so exploitable in so many ways. I'm going to take advantage of it. So in my code here, I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And so this is my cheat. I'm going to go ahead and take that net message that I found, and I saw that they're writing a class name, they're writing the price, and they're writing a player. So there's a few things that we can do here. With this, we can give any weapon to any player, and we can give any weapon for free, so we don't have to charge a single thing, and we can choose who gets the weapon. And the reason for this is because we're not actually sending, for example, the ID as we were doing it in the previous tutorial. We would send an ID and then we would look up all the data inside this table. However, in our client-side code, we're already looping over that table. And so we're just sending the values to the server. And this is bad because the client can manipulate that, and I'm going to show you that now. So what I'm going to do here for the right string, I'm going to go ahead and pick a weapon from the list, one that's not even in the shop. So I don't believe there's an AK-47, so I want that, and I'm going to go ahead and put that here. Next, I don't want to spend any money, so I'm going to go ahead and set this to 0. Then I actually want to give this to myself, so I'm going to keep this as local player, so I'm going to save this now. Okay, so if you look here, I do not have an AK-47, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Lua underscore open script CL, and then we're going to take our file name here, which is awesomecheat.lua, and hit enter. And now you can see I just got an AK-47 and I did not lose any money. If I do that again, I am not, I am not losing any money for sure. And I'm going to do it with the AK-74. I'm going to go ahead and give that to myself and take a good look at my money at the bottom left. And boom, I got an AK-74 from that code, and my money did not go down. So this is a serious issue. So how do we fix this? Real quick, actually, before we fix it, I want to show you an example of how I can give a weapon to another player. So if I just hop into my console here and I print table, player.getAll, you can see we have the first ID here, which is player 1, which is me. And then in the second ID here, we have player 2, which is the bot. So I'm going to go ahead and give this bot an AK-74. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that table that we just printed, player.getAll, and I'm going to index by the second player. So now if I run this code again, you can now see that he actually got the AK-74. So this is a serious issue. So let's talk about how to fix this. So the first thing that we want to do is actually fix the option to give a weapon to any player. So to do that, this is actually fairly simple. If you look here in our function arguments on this original net.receive, we have the len and we have the PLY. So PLY is actually the player that sent the net message. So we do not need to write the entity here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to remove this line. So we're no longer writing the entity. And then on our receive, we're no longer going to read this entity. And we're going to go into our arguments here and fill them in with the appropriate information. So now if I save this and I hop back into the shop now, I can go ahead and buy this M24 and everything still works because we know which player is attempting to send this message. Okay, now to fix this, what we want to do is get the item data similar to how we did it in the previous tutorial. Because if you look here in our code, originally we were sending K, which was the current iteration of the loop, which it makes sense. So if we send 1, we know that this is the SKS. If we send 2, this is the M24. If we send 3, this is the Glock. So that's a way to index the information here. We just want to go ahead and write K, which, like I said, was the current iteration. So net.write, and I believe we did an integer, write int, and we'll do K, 32, and we will send that to the server. And then what it's going to do here, and I'm going to remove this bad code now, and I'm just going to explain why the option above here is better than this. So first off, we are using PLY, correct? That's the right thing we want to do. Then we have this ID here. And so this ID is going to be a number between 1 and 3 for the most part, because there's only 3 items in the loop. One thing you could do is actually check to see if this ID is a number that is not 1, 2, or 3. And if it's not, more than likely, this person is sending an ID that is most likely sending an item that is not legit. So we could actually check here and we could say if ID is greater than table.count tutorial shop dot items, then we're going to return, meaning the code below is not going to run, and we're going to say print ply Steam ID is potentially attempting to abuse a net message, and we could say tutorial shop underscore purchase, and then we can paste the ID that they're sending here. So I'm just going to show you that real quick. So if I go ahead and go in game now, and we have our new net messages set up, you can see this is working here. Everything's fine. Good stuff, yada, yada, yada. What I want to do is actually use this cheat here, and using the new method or the new structure here, I'm going to go ahead and send a number that does not exist. So I'm going to go ahead and do net.write int, and I'm going to say, for example, 4. Okay. And so now if I go in here and I open up that code here, you can see nothing happened in game. However, if we go into console, we can see Steam ID is potentially attempting to abuse a net message, tutorial shop underscore purchase. So, hey, we know that something is not right here. And so we can utilize information and look at our structure and see if there's anything that is abnormal and then potentially report it. So, for example, I would maybe kick this player or ban them for potentially abusing. Okay, so now that we have some form of protection here, just to check to see if somebody is exploiting, this will not run any code, so there's nothing that we really need to worry about. However, this is just more of a thing to potentially catch any cheaters. And you can see here if there's no item data. So for example, if this person sends 5 for whatever reason, we also have a method here to check if they are also sending some form of illegitimate ID. So now we actually have all the data that we need with this item data, since we're looking up the value based on the ID that was sent. So there's no reason to send the price, there's no reason to send the class name, and there's no reason to send the player that is attempting to purchase something here, because we have all this information stored on the table. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you are developing some form of networking for your add-on. Another thing that I should mention, just to kind of go over some general topics here, if you are ever working on, for example, like a NPC where you heal a player, a really important thing to do is check to see if the player is actually near the NPC whenever they are attempting to be healed. So for example, you could write the NPC from the client to the server that they're attempting to be healed by. You check to see if the NPC is actually a healing NPC, and then you also check to see if the player is within the correct distance. For example, if the player is sending an entity that is not a healing NPC but is calling the healing net message, then we can say, hey, this guy might be attempting to abuse, and so then we'll want to ban them. Or if they're not within distance, there's a couple things that could happen there where they could just move away from the NPC, but the menu's still open, but we'll just want to return if they're too far away so the healing doesn't happen. Otherwise, if we didn't check for the distance and we didn't check for the correct entity, well, then they can heal themselves no matter where they are in the world. In this case, if we had like an NPC where we're purchasing items from, not only would we want to send the ID, like I said, we want to check the NPC where they're purchasing the items from and make sure it's correct and they're within distance. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind. There's not a solution for everything. However, it depends what your structure is, what information is necessary. So the key things to remember: send the least amount of information as possible. That way you're not sending useless info that is not needed. Additionally, you want to only send IDs that you can really look up for items, or just don't trust the client is basically the overall message here, because the client, as shown in this awesome cheat, can manipulate the data. So that's an example of how to abuse the net messages. That's how you can patch them. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment them down below. Also, just so you guys know, this video tutorial was selected based on Patreon. So as you can see here on Patreon, we had 3 people vote, and the video that was suggested was networking exploits and how to patch them. So if you guys are interested in having a say on which video I produce next, make sure to check out my Patreon, link in the description, and you can vote on the next video. Also, you get access to all the code that is in my tutorials, so you no longer need to watch them if you're just interested in the code. So that will be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and take care.